Um, want to welcome Sam Pace. Sam, I'm trying to remember. Actually, I do remember. We met through a suggestion that a friend of mine had. Her name is Janet Marks. Said you ought to get to know this guy, Sam Pace. I think he has a lot in common with you. And in fact, he does, and we do. More so than just the haircut that we both sport this morning. Anyway, Sam is a minister for a Church of Christ that is no more than, I think, probably 2 miles from my house. They meet at a middle school called Mission Point, and Sam went to school at the same place where Matt Fredrickson went to school. And for the life of me, that name escapes me. What's the name of the school, Sam?
It was Rochester College, now Rochester University up in Michigan.
Yeah, Church of Christ School up in Michigan. And anyway, has been involved in ministry for quite some time. How many years now, Sam?
Well, I think 35 years this year. So
35. So
mhm.
you have some stories to tell
I started when I was four.
when you were 4 years old. Well, these are all friendly guys. We're part of the SKP camp. Some of us are part of the board, and
Mhm.
then we have just some people who appreciate our community and want to be a part of this daily quiet time series that we have. Get a lot of folks who listen to this recording later, which is cool.
Mm.
But anyway, just got to know Sam. Has I have attended some of the services there where he holds court with his small church there at the middle school, and appreciate his vision, his heart for God. And we had a day here some time ago with Jeff Kemp, and Sam Pace's bunch decided to support financially our day there, and we're very grateful for them and the people that he brought. And anyway, just has a lot of love for God, and he knows Joseph Porter, who's been on our call. He knows John Porter
Mhm.
and Kent Smith as well, and just have some very interesting connections there. And he's a mountain man, although you weren't really born in the mountains, but you got here as quick as you could, and that's
Mm.
kind of my story too. And I've built up this whole thing that you are a long range precision shooter. So I think there may be some life lessons there on how to stay focused.
Oh boy.
So, brother, I give it to you. Thanks, Dan, for showing up.
All right. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? That's my sound coming through. All right. Good, good. Well, I wasn't too sure of the format or who would be here today, so I'm going to try to tailor a bit of what I say to the group that I'm looking at anyway. Um, been thinking about fathers and sons and just fatherhood in general. I'm about to do a men's retreat myself this next week, and it'll be up in the mountains here in Colorado with a group of about 30 guys and a lot of father sons in that group too. So some of what I'm going to say share today is has to do with what I'm about to share with them. Um, I'm a local minister. That's what I've done. As Bart pointed out, I've done that for 35 years. I love local ministry, and lately I've been on a kick of pointing out something that I call the hard work of ministry. And not all ministry is hard work, but there is the hard work of ministry, which is, I think, doing things with great intention. And what I mean by that is rather than always reacting to problems within the church or reacting to problems in your marriage or reacting to problems with your parenting or reacting to problems. We can kind of get ahead of those things by being very intentional and doing the hard work of ministry where we invest in the people around us in ways that isn't just preventative but is instructive. Um, and one of the things I try to compare when I talk about this is usually the idea that we need to be people who are acting towards the things that we're experiencing in life, rather than reacting to them, acting towards them rather than reacting. And so. I wanted to share a couple of thoughts along those lines with um, what we might talk about as a father's instruction. A father's instruction. Now, I'll lead into that, and I'll have some things to ask you at the end of this here in just a few minutes. But uh, whenever I do men's retreats, and I've done several of them, I always ask that question: who was the most influential person in your life growing up? And have you ever done that? You've been to men's retreats, you ask that question. Dad almost always makes the list, right? Dad almost always makes the list. Um, and often when I ask why is he on the list, I get several stories about things that dad did, things that dad demonstrated in his life, the kind of person he was. And it seems to me that most of what I've experienced in those conversations has to do with people being very much a good example for their children, which I think is great. I think it's wonderful. I think that's really important. But it's very passive, also. So I'll give you an example. So when I was a kid, I was about 14 years old. My dad decided to take us to this nursing home on Sunday mornings to pick up people who wanted to go to church. And I met there a guy named AJ Updike, and AJ was somewhere in his early 80s. He had scoliosis of the spine. He couldn't walk. He couldn't speak. He had a speech impediment. And it was my job at 14 years old with my newly developed muscles to pick AJ up and put him into the car and help him get out and get back into his wheelchair and take him in. And my dad really wanted to be a blessing to other people and to help them. And he took me along with him, and he set a great example of what it means to minister to the least of these people that cannot care for themselves. And I remember that as a very passive lesson. My dad never sat down with me and said, "Sam, here's book, chapter, and verse on exactly what you need to know." What he did was he went back and he said, he showed me, he demonstrated for me what it was like. He invited people into our home all the time. If you visited our church, it didn't matter what you looked like, what you smelled like. It didn't matter. You were going to come to our house for dinner if you were willing. And so I saw that example. And so as I think back on my dad and my upbringing with him, he was a good example, but I can't think of hardly a single time that my dad was intentional about giving me instruction. And I think that passive style of parenting, that's great. It's wonderful, and I do it too. And I've raised three children. I have three grandchildren now, and I want to be a good example. But I also want to be very intentional in what I do as a husband, as a father, as a minister, as a friend, as a neighbor. And so as I was thinking about that, I was reading through the Proverbs, and there's several. I'm going to read a couple of them for you here in just a moment. And I think I've listed out maybe nine of them altogether. I'll read two or three of them. And I want to read them first and then make the point, and then I think that it'll kind of start making sense. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8 and 9. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Indeed, they are a graceful wreath to your head and ornaments about your neck. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments for length of days and years of life, and peace they will add to you. Proverbs chapter 4, verses 10 and 11. It says, Hear, my son, and accept my sayings, and the years of your life will be many. I have directed you in the way of wisdom. I have led you in upright paths. I'll just pick one more. Proverbs chapter 7, verses 1 through 3. He writes and says, My son, keep my words and treasure my commandments within you. Keep my commandments and live, and my teachings as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart. Um, I've often read those passages as a son, thinking about listening to the instruction of a father. And as I've gotten a bit older in my life, I started transitioning my way of thinking from that about hearing them as a son, but thinking them as a father, and accepting the challenge that they bring to me. And the challenge is this: that if my sons are going to remember my teaching, there has to be teaching. If they're going to remember my sayings, I'm going to have to say some stuff. If they're going to remember the wisdom that I've shared, first of all, I'm going to have some wisdom. That would be kind of helpful. But I'm also going to have to share that wisdom. And I'm going to have to think about that as a father in ways that are intentional. So, in other words, rather than being passive and being an example, I've taken it upon myself over the last couple of decades of my life to be very intentional in sitting down and thinking, what are the things that I want to invest in my children? What are the things I want to say to my sons and my daughters? I'll give you a couple of examples of some ways that I've done that. When my daughters, I have one adopted daughter and one daughter that was born the boring old natural way. They made us take her home from the hospital. We actually got to pick our other daughter, and my daughter that's by natural birth doesn't like it when I say that. But we love them both dearly, and I just decided to do daddy daughter dates, and it wasn't just like, hey, let's go out to dinner. Let's go out and maybe go do a little shopping together, or go for dinner and go for a walk or something like that. I wanted at each one of these occasions to share some particular thing about life with them, some particular thing about faith, and something about who God created them to be. And I was just very intentional on those daddy daughter dates to go out and be specific that I wanted to impart some kind of wisdom or knowledge. Um, I for many years this would kind of my kids got kind of excited about this, but I would actually handwrite letters to my son and my daughters, and I would actually mail them, like literally go to some place and mail them back to our home. Like I wrote them at home, I left, I sent them back as a letter, and my kids would get letters in the mail from me. And admittedly, that was before I think text messaging was much of a thing. But I would send them letters and I would write out things that I specifically wanted to share with them about life and about faith, and it was a very intentional way of trying to convey to my children things that I really wanted them to know. And it was a unique way to do it because they weren't getting mail from mom and dad, and while they were living in mom and dad's house. Um, Lately I've been doing something to this effect with my sons. I have two son-in-laws now, and my son Jacob. And every week I write a text message to them as a group, and I send that with just encouragement, some kind of knowledge that I've been thinking about lately that I want to share with them. Just life lessons that I learned when I was younger, things I'm kind of wishing that I thought about now that that I wish I'd known back then, those kind of things. And so I'm just being very intentional about taking and investing in my sons. Two of my son-in-laws didn't have fathers to speak of growing up. And so being a father to them has been quite a challenge. And I think they appreciate, they've articulated that to me, that I'm taking time to be intentional with them. And I've done some other things, going on outings with my sons, hunting, camping, fishing, just spending time with them. And each time I do those things, I always try to think about something that I want to share with them, not incidentally, but intentionally when we go out together and spend time together. And so, as I was thinking about this little message today, I just wanted to share with you um, this idea that we need to not only lead by example as fathers, husbands, church leaders, but we need to lead with great intention. And I think that's the hard work of ministering or serving other people in life. Um, so what I had in mind, and Bart had said that we could do this, is that I would share a little bit of my thoughts with you, and then I would ask you to share back with me. Maybe the first question that I have is, what are you hearing me say, and what is this inspiring in you at this point? What are you hearing me say, and what is this inspiring? And I just open that up for anybody.
Yeah, man, you're just firing up all kinds of ideas here. Sam, thank you very much. I'm I've been working on Ephesians 6, verse 4 recently. Fathers, do not
Mhm.
exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. And you asked some good questions, being intentional. Well, what is that instruction and what is that training? And recently, I've had a chance to connect with some Jewish thought, and I'm told that the real Orthodox fathers have the tradition of teaching all the Bible stories to their kids before the age of 7. And
Mm.
what that does is sort of give them a canvas from which to make future decisions. If they know these stories, then they can go back to them and and make good decisions based on the stories. So I've started a list. I talked to Will about this the other day. We should come up with a list of Bible stories that we really intentionally go after all through the Bible. I've made a list of 30 stories. And speaking of fathers and sons, only father son stories or male stories. And it's been a wonderful dive, but I'm just kind of starting with with the idea of it. Thanks very much for those practicals. Yeah.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, I'd like to share.
Hmm.
Thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate it. Um, right now, the only real sort of spiritual talks that I have with I have two teens, a male. My son is going to be 19 actually next week, and then my daughter will be 17 in August. So after church, we definitely, dialogue and discuss the message. But that's pretty much it. We get, they're busy. My son's in college, and but it's good to hear this because it's a great reminder. I have to be a lot more intentional than just a Sunday service, but to go grab coffee or breakfast or somewhere and have more of a spiritual talk. I tend to do that with my son, just in passing more consistently, but definitely need to make more time with my daughter. And her nature is very independent, very I'm good, Dad. Like just so I need to somehow, break through that and spend more time. And my biggest thing last few years is just to make sure I'm not, um, you know, not guilting them out, not, like any guilt, shame, like that is the farthest thing from God. So really trying to help them understand God's mercy, God's grace, God's love, and really focus a lot more on that so that they're not, "Oh, I got to do this out of fear or dad's going to ask." And, just let it be just, naturally, organically, out of love, just trying to create more of that environment, good, bad, or ugly, whatever may come, and not be, so judgmental or anything of that nature, and making sure it fits the right box. And it's like, nope, you be who you are, and you have a long way to grow and change, and and not, just make sure I'm conveying that message on a consistent basis because religious conformity is dangerous, and it's not real. So anyhow, I think that's just you're sparking that motivation to really be a lot more intentional, with just spending time, especially as they get older and busier and things of that such. So appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. I want to say, I think you're picking up exactly what I'm trying to convey, and that's excellent. One thing that I try to avoid, I shouldn't maybe say it that way. Um, when a difficult conversation has to happen, that's a reaction. Like, hey, they've done something or something's kind of gone awry in their life, and now I'm going to have to kind of show up with some instruction or some correction or discipline. I'll do those things, and I don't avoid them at all. What I'm gearing towards is the acting rather than reacting side of this. So, and you mentioned that. So, so in other words, when your kids are kind of going astray, well, hey, you gotta react to that in some way. But I'm thinking more preemptively and saying, okay, I have a little bit of an advantage. I've lived considerably longer than my children have lived. And so what that does for me is it gives me an opportunity to reflect on what are the things that I've learned in life ahead of schedule for them. Like, I've gone on before them, and now I'm trying to look back and say, hey, what are some things that, well, I sure would have liked to know back when I was 18 years old or when I was 15 years old. And then I don't drop it on them like it's a reaction or a disciplinary conversation. I definitely don't do it in a passive aggressive way. What I mean by that is if someone has ever done something passive aggressive, they're going to drop some hints. Like, I'm not saying that this is a problem for you, but it really is. I mean, like, you really are being passive aggressive. I try to pick subjects that are somewhat disengaged from what they're experiencing now, trying to head off something they're going to experience at some point in the future, maybe the near future, um, as kind of a preemptive teaching. Does that make sense to everybody? I mean, I've had three or four of these today. I need three or four more, I think, before I can speak it correctly. But yeah, I'm gonna have the tough conversations. I'm gonna talk about the things they're experiencing in real time. But this is my way of kind of getting ahead of things and talking about things that really ultimately matter in life, so that kind of as they run into them, and they're going to run into them, whether it's going into junior high or high school or college or trade school or marriage or parenting. I just try to pick up and say, well, where's this going, and what can be kind of laid down in the way of that, so that when they get there, they're like, yeah, I'm not completely unaware of this. Like, it seems like someone maybe taught me something about this, and I don't sit down and say, okay, now let me teach you a few things. Like, that's not how I do that. I'm more or less with my sons. If I'm having those conversations, it's like, hey, let's go to the gun range, let's shoot some, and then on the way there, it's an hour and a half ride, and I'll just ask them some questions and we'll have a conversation. But I have very intentionally, decided that this is a subject I want to share with them, and I want to make sure that it comes up almost naturally. Does that make sense to everybody? It's almost naturally. I mean, is obviously not. I'm intentional about it. I'm trying to create that environment where that would happen. Um, and maybe that's part of my personality. I am a precision rifle shooter, as Bart mentions. I shoot out to 2,000 yards. I shoot a little over a mile, and I am not designed to be like the shotgun shooter, the big, just shoot and hope something happens. Like, I'm trying to pick a 12-inch by 18-inch spot at 2,000 yards that I can consistently hit. That's my brain. And so when I talk about living with intention, maybe I'm a little overzealous in that department, just kind of the way I'm designed. But I think that you can blend that in very nicely, where you've got something that you've prepared yourself to think through, and then you can convey that in natural conversation.
Beautiful.
Thank
Others.
you so much. I just was thinking about all the things you shared, and the many years that I was coaching wrestling in college and the youth level. I focused so much on intentional focus. I called it intentional focus, and every week we would have. Well, I was very fortunate to coach at York College, and being coaching at York College, I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate to be able to really have quiet times before, or little times with the wrestlers before we even start practice, and that's the focus we did. We talked about intentional focus, and we would talk about specifically, if you want to be a great husband, you have to have intentional focus. If you want to be a great dad, you have to have intentional focus. If you want to be a great employee, you have to have intentional focus. If you want to be a great owner, you have to have intentional focus, and it comes down to be daily, weekly. And you want to be a great wrestler, you have to have intentional focus. And so today, I even said I would do the same things that you would say. I'd go, who have you picked out today already? Who's going to be your wrestling partner? Because who you choose is going to make you a great wrestler, or going to make you, if you find somebody in the wrestling room that's lazy, and you see them being lazy and don't have the mood of to wrestle today, don't choose them as your partner. Choose someone who's really serious as 10, who came in focused, came in ready to go. And I said, so it changed the whole wrestling room. because kids wanted to come in with their shoes ready, tied up, ready to go, ready for practice. And it changed the whole momentum and the spirit of the room when we focused on attentional, being intent with it. So I really appreciate that so much. And also regarding my kids, it was really difficult for me because I was so intense and with intentional focus. Um, my daughter would do the same thing. Your daughter, I'm good. I'm good. Or Aaron's daughter, hey, I'm good, Dad. I'm good. And so that was really challenging. And so then my wife would tell me I would have to really focus more on the relationship part of things, not on the lessons part of things. And so that was
Mm,
really humbling for me because I'm more focused on the part of the brain where I focus on actually fixing things or getting things better. And that's not that's not the gift I had. So I had to learn how to fan that gift. And but I really appreciate what you shared today.
yeah, right on. Yeah, just to piggyback on that last thought there. Part of my intention has been to get my children into places or communicate in ways that are natural for them. So rather than let's sit down and have a cup of coffee at the dinner table, and have this very serious conversation, that's not going to work well with any of my three sons. Driving down the road, talking about hunting and fishing and other things like that, and they're relaxed. We're going somewhere together. I think that maybe even that's a male trait that I'm a chaplain for the Thornton Police Department. I think Bart was also at one point. Um, I um, if I sat down and started talking to a police officer and I wanted to convey something very serious to them, that would be awkward. They're much more comfortable when you're riding along and you're chit-chatting about things and you're going and doing something. And so sometimes I'll even meet them outside of work and say, "Hey, let's go grab a coffee," or "Hey, let's go to the gun range and shoot a little bit. Maybe you can show me a few things." And but it's on the way there and back that you kind of get that relational thing happening that's more natural rather than sitting down trying to have a very I'd say didactic conversation. I'm here to teach you something and why aren't you taking notes, right? That's not going to work with most guys. With my daughters, usually we'll have a meal and just sitting around having a meal and talking and kind of putting away the phones, making sure that those aren't an interruption. And I actually just don't even ask my daughters questions because I've learned that there'll be kind of like, I'm okay, or whatever, I'll just start talking about some subject, or they're talking about something, and I join in on that, and I just kind of look for an on ramp or an off ramp in there where I can kind of talk about something I wanted to share. And do it for a reasonable period of time, so it's not, doesn't, come across as something that's, being imposed on them in some way. And then I take the off ramp, when it seems like it's time to get out of that. And so I just try to find places that make sense to my children and their personalities. And that that seems to work pretty well.
Beautiful. Well, Sam, sure appreciate your time here. I can remember having family devos, having 3-point sermons, and then having like a cartoon, two X's over my children's eyes, the tongue hanging out, and my wife saying,
Yep.
"Baby, they're not going to get it this way." So to have this kind of conversation where we can talk about on ramps and off ramps, how to bring it in naturally. What a wonderful way to spend our morning together. Thank you so much, Sam. Guys, we're going to
Thanks,
wrap it up.
guys.
We're going to
Thanks,
wrap it up
Sam.
there. Tomorrow we have another Sam coming up. His name is Dr. Samuel Ancrod. I'm sorry, Tumasi Ancrod, and he is a Church of Christ minister in Accra, Ghana. Guy who I've got a real fun story to tell you about tomorrow. But it's been a wonderful week, Sam. Great thoughts here this morning. All you guys, thanks for showing up. We even have Mario Ortega, who's showing up from Mexico City here online today. So appreciate him going bilingual with us today. Sam, thanks so much, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Sam.
Thank you, Sam. That was awesome.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
guys. Thanks, Sam. Yep.
Have a great day.
Have a great day, guys.
Bye.